A very good evening to everyone here. It's not really easy to choose to come to an intellectual discussion on a Friday evening just before festival. And I'm so surprised and very impressed by all of you who've chosen to do that and spend your Friday evening in a meaningful engagement with some of the most impressive leaders we have in our country. When we were in college, they used to say that the naughty students sit in the back benches and the studious ones sit in the first rows. Since today we are not really in a class but in a conversation, and we would love for you to participate in the discussion that happens here, may I please request all of you seated behind to kindly come be closer to our speakers and make sure of engaging with them personally as well. I'll kindly request you all to please come ahead and occupy the chairs in the front. Thank you so much for considering the request. There's plenty of space here, except maybe for the camera podiums, which might block your views. Thank you. So I'm Prerna. I'm the program director of the School of Ultimate Leadership, and I would be hosting today's session for all of you. You might be wondering what the School of Ultimate Leadership is. And for that, I would like to request our director, Mr. Saurabh Johri, to please share about this pioneering institution with all of you. So Saurabh is not only the director of the School of Ultimate Leadership, he is also the director of the Piramal School of Leadership. Previously, he has worked with World Bank, ADB, McKinsey, and PwC. He's also worked with the Observer Research Foundation, Pratham, and Azim Premji Foundation. In his present role at Piramal, he is working with last mile public delivery officials, middle managers in bureaucracy, learning with them, and supporting policymakers in transitioning towards Vikasit Bharat. Saurabh.
Namaskar. Thank you, Prerna, for that kind introduction. And good evening, everyone in Ahmedabad. I am very happy to be part of this gathering, and I take this opportunity to briefly tell you about School of Ultimate Leadership, or popularly known as SOUL. It is a privately funded institute which will have its own campus near Gift City in Ahmedabad. And but the programs and many other things have already started, and this is one of the series of programs which Soul is initiating along with Ahmedabad Management Association. So thank you very much for coming to this gathering. So Soul is a leadership development institution based in Ahmedabad, but with a mission for the entire country and the world. The aim is to develop leaders in the field of public policy, especially political leaders who are equipped not only with skills and strategies, but with the character, ethics, and empathy needed to lead effectively in today's complex world. The school is built on a mission to cultivate leaders who stand out by their integrity, compassion, and resilience. The world we live in today demands leaders who can tackle diverse challenges from social issues to environmental issues and who have the strength to guide others through times of uncertainty. But how do we nurture such leaders? The answer lies in an approach which not only develops intellect but also the heart and soul of a leader. The foundation of this school rests on pillars like self awareness, compassion, ethical decision making, and transformational action. For example, Self awareness is about who we are, what we value, and what drives us. It is a process of introspection and continuous learning. At Soul, leaders will be encouraged to explore their own strengths and limitations, to identify their biases, and to find purpose in their actions. Another value we nurture is compassion in leadership, which means genuinely understanding and valuing the experiences and perspectives of others. You will be happy to know that compassion is now a learnable skill and has components like active listening, nonviolent communication, appreciative inquiry, etc., to make decisions that reflect the well being of the citizens of the country. In a world where the pressures of power and profit often drives decision, Soul will engage with leaders to prioritize ethics, integrity, and authenticity. This means that leaders are not just making decisions that benefit their immediate circle, but are also considering the broader impact on society and the environment. And finally, Soul will advance the ability of transformational action, which is about inspiring real positive change. Leaders will be engaged to think big, to innovate, and to take bold steps to create solutions for pressing social and economic issues. They will be equipped not only to adapt to change, but to drive it, serving as catalysts for progress wherever they go. In conclusion, Soul isn't about training in leadership development or leadership techniques. It's about building a legacy of individuals who will change the world for the better. I'm looking forward to today's discussion, which will further explore these values and inspire us to shape a world that we can all be proud of. Thank you.
That's the hazard of having a 6 feet tall director. Next, I'll request Mr. Rajiv Gandhi, who is the Vice President of Ahmedabad Management Association, who've been our partner in this engagement, to please give the welcome address. Mr. Gandhi is also the Managing Director and CEO of Hester Biosciences, Asia's largest animal vaccine manufacturing company. He was awarded the Entrepreneur of 2016 for his exceptional leadership and entrepreneurial spirit. Besides this, he's also the chairman of FICCI. Mr. Rajiv.
Chairman of FICCI Gujarat, not of FICCI India, just. Good evening, distinguished guests, esteemed speakers, and all attendees. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome you all to today's event, Leadership Samvad, Emerging Perspectives of Indic Leadership, organized here at Ahmedabad Management Association. This evening, we embark on a thoughtful journey to explore the evolving dimensions of leadership rooted in India's rich cultural ethos, blending ancient wisdom and contemporary governance practices. Today's event symbolizes enlightenment and the pursuit of knowledge, making it a fitting platform to discuss leadership principles that have stood the test of time and their relevance in today's dynamic world. With great pleasure, I would now like to invite our distinguished speakers, Dr. Hasmukh Adia, Dr. R. Bala Subramaniam, Professor Niharika Vora, and Mr. Jagshay Shah to join us on the stage. From AMS side, we would be giving a small memento to our distinguished guests.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gandhi. So earlier this month, I was in London speaking at a conference on conflict management. And it turns out that only 29% of people trust their leaders to lead humanly during conflict. And that's the challenge of leadership that we are talking about, which, when in times of difficulty, needs complex and intense decision making mixed with empathy. Today, we are extremely privileged to have among us a very powerful panel of three doctors, one a very literal doctor, and an astute businessman. Mr. Shah is saying one compounder, but I would strongly not agree. So please allow me to introduce our esteemed panelists and do justice to their phenomenal leadership contribution over the years. I'd first like to introduce our main speaker, Mr. Bala Subramaniam, fondly called as Balu among people who know him. He's a widely respected development expert, public policy analyst, leadership trainer, and author. He has spent several decades living and working among forest based tribal communities in Mysore, Karnataka. He founded the Swami Vivekanand Youth Movement. It's a renowned development organization and grassroots research and advocacy movement known as GRAM, a public policy think tank. Balu is also a former Rhodes Professor at Cornell University, United States, and IIT Delhi. He coaches and mentors seniors leaders in the nonprofit, corporate, government, and educational sectors. His books, I, the Citizen, Voices from the Grassroots, Leadership Lessons for Daily Living, and most recently, what you see on all the banners here, The Power Within, Leadership Legacy of Narendra Modi, are globally acclaimed. After his MBBS, Balu has earned his MPhil in Hospital Administration from BITS Pilani and an MPA from Harvard University. Next, I would warmly welcome Dr. Hasmukh, the ex-finance secretary and revenue secretary in the government of India. He's credited with the successful implementation of GST in the country and lauded by none other than our respective late finance minister, Mr. Arun Jaitley. Presently, Dr. Adhia is the principal advisor to the Chief Minister of Gujarat and on the board non-executive chairman of three state-owned companies, GIFT, GACL, and GMDC. Dr. Adhia is also associated with educational institutions in varied capacities, such as the Chancellor of the University of Gujarat, the board member of IIM Bangalore, and the vice chairman of the board of the School of Ultimate Leadership. Dr. Adhia is a postgraduate in accountancy, a gold medalist from IIM Bangalore in public policy, and a PhD in yoga from Swami Vivekanand Yoga University. Our dear professor, Dr. Vora, is next. Besides being a distinguished professor at IIM Ahmedabad, expert in organizational behavior and leadership, Dr. Vora has more than 2 decades of experience in academia and consulting with various government and corporate organizations. Her research focuses on leadership development, team dynamics, and gender in organizations. She has served as chairperson of IIM Ahmedabad's doctoral program, has over 70 peer-reviewed research papers in top-level international journals, and authored 3 books. She has also been the founding vice chancellor of Delhi Skill and Entrepreneurship University and is on board of several organizations. She holds 2 postgraduate degrees and a PhD from University of Manitoba, Canada. And now I welcome Mr. Jakshay Shah. He's the chairperson of Quality Council of India, the founder and chairman of the Savvy Group of Companies, an esteemed real estate conglomerate, the promoter, director, and founding member on the board of Open Network Digital Commerce, we popularly know it as ONDC, the advisor and mentor to PharmEasy Accelerator Program, promotional director of Kenswell Golf and Country Club, Savvy Swaraj Sports Academy, and a trustee of LD College of Engineering Alumni Association and Jyoth. A warm welcome to all of you. And now I'll request Dr. Vera to take over.
So again, good evening to all of you, and very good evening to our distinguished panelists. I think we should just get started. You've all spent your time, and we should respect it and hear the most out of the author of the book and the respected panelists on their experiences with the leader and with leadership. I would just like to start off by saying that as somebody who has dabbled with understanding leadership, I have always maintained that leadership is not a noun, it's a verb. It's not who you are, it's not your position, it's not your individual being, but it's when you act like a leader, you're a leader, which means all of us at some point do act like leaders. We all exercise leadership. The only thing is, do we do it enough? And also, do we learn where to and how to exercise leadership? And I think we have a great example in our PM, who's referred to in the book, on whom you've written the book. And so I'm going to request you, Dr. Balu, to first start off by sharing about why you wrote the book, what is Indic leadership, and your experiences. It's up to you. Yeah.
Good evening, all the distinguished panelists on the stage and friends here. Speaking about a subject at Ahmedabad in Gujarat with such distinguished people here is not going to be an easy task for me, but I'm going to try. I actually started my life very differently, being a physician who thought that the state is the root of the problem. And the state is something which can't understand citizens. I went away in sheer frustration to the forest, living with tribals. So 26 years I lived in the forest like a tribal with them. And during that time, what really came out of me was anger and frustration. Anger and frustration that I was living amidst in an area in the national park, the Bandipur National Park, which had 4 major reservoirs constructed. The park was declared national park, but it actually wasn't a national park. They just declared the intent and everybody forgot about it. 13 years later, the Gazette notified the declaration of intent, by which time all the tribals whom I was working with were removed from the forest and no rehabilitation was done. So in sheer anger, frustration, I sued the government. I sued the government of Karnataka, the government of India, won my battles. But then what question that struck me was, why isn't the policy maker sitting in Delhi figuring out what people need? Why aren't they understanding what the citizens' voices are? Why can't they understand tribals are integral to society and forests as much as anybody else is? In an intent of finding out answers, I thought university education will provide me that. So from BITS Pilani to National Institute of Health to all kinds of places, my journey took me to Harvard, the Kennedy School, then a fellowship on leadership. I quickly realized policies, I possibly imagined at that time, policy is messed up because the policy maker is messed up. So I thought, let me understand policy makers and started understanding it. By the time I'd won these battles, I'd won the cases against the government in the NHRC and other places. So I was celebrating because we got 500 acres of prime land released, rehabilitation to be attempted in a state where there was no R&R policy of any kind. And I was celebrating in a very celebratory mood. Elderly chieftain called Kempaya, whom I refer in all my books. He was, every evening he would come and meet me. And that evening he came and he was very sullen and sad. And I asked him, I thought you will welcome me as God. You will put a garland around me and say, I have done magic. Very non-violently, we actually bent the state. We won our battles. We got land release, which has never happened before. Government accepted it didn't do a good job and they were illegal in terms of the national park getting declared. We should be happy. He said, "You will never understand. You people from the cities will never understand." All my life, I'd grown up in Bangalore. The first time I ever saw an Indian village is after medicine when I went to go live with the tribals. And so, coming from that background, when he said that, I didn't understand. I asked him, "What is it? What do you mean?" He said, "You won the battle, but we lost our tribal identity." Adivasiyat in Kannada, that's what we call the equivalent of it. And I was quite surprised. He said, "Jal, jungle, jameen," what we typically say of tribals. He said, "You never understood it. We lost it. We never had individual ownership. Now you have got us 2 acres of land each. You got us a house individually. So you said you destroyed the identity of tribals because you people in the cities always thrive on individual identities. You have no identity of your own." And he asked me a question, "What is your identity?" He asked me. So I really didn't know. Should I answer that I'm from Bangalore? Or I'm a Kannadiga who grew up in a Tamil family? Or I went to Harvard? I had just no answer. And then suddenly it struck me, we Indians have fine tuned the act of fragmenting our thinking, fragmenting our identities, fragmenting ourselves. We see ourselves in terms of language, color, gender, degrees, states, etc. But we hardly think of ourselves with the Bharatiya identity. And that is when I started looking at, can I actually identify myself as a somebody civilizationally very close to this country? I grew up in a family which is very middle class, trained to think only in English. So to de-think that and to start thinking in Kannada was quite a battle. I used to write, I used to be a well-known Kannada writer. And I started writing again, but starting to write thinking like a Kannada guy. And my research led me to simple things like the Jataka tales. We dismiss it off. Every child in India grows up on Tom and Jerry cartoons, but we don't grow up on Jataka tales and Panchatantra, embedded with leadership messages in them. Then I graduated a bit more. I went into Mahabharata, Ramayana, then into the uh, works of Kautilya's Arthashastra and Adi Shankara's Atma Bodha, Viveka Chudamani, and other books like that, the Bhagavad Gita, etc. 15 years of my life, next part of my life, I spent in deep research. Put it all together and discovered there's so much material on leadership in our country that what I learned at Harvard is very inadequate and incomplete. But then I thought I could never identify any human being which could meet some of the criteria I was describing in my own research discoveries. So I went to my guru, a well-known monk of the Ramakrishna order. He was alive at that time, and I told him, "I have found so much in our scriptures and civilizational wisdom, but I don't think there'll ever be a person who can personify all this." And he said, "I don't know much about all these things. You ask me to talk to you about Advaita, I can help you. You ask me to talk about leadership, I'll be zero." But he said many, many decades ago, I know one of my brother monks, he was a very elderly monk at that time itself. He said, one of my brother monks in the order in Rajkot told me of a young man who came and pestered him that he wanted to be a monk. And actually, I spent time in the room in which Prime Minister Modi stayed at Rajkot, just trying to get the feeling and soak it in. That room is still maintained in the ashram. And he said he was discouraged. He said, "Go do a degree and come back." And then he came back. He went to Belur Mutt and he again asked them, "I want to join the order." And they told him, "Come back." So he came back to Rajkot, met the Swamiji again. Swami Atmasnananji was the president of the Rajkot ashram here, who later on became the head of the order itself. And at that time, he told him, "Your destiny is something else. Your destiny is not monkhood, but something greater than that, which people will benefit from. So go away." And he was Narendra Modi. And for me, when I heard this, I said, I'm in a forest. He's the chief minister of a state. He was chief minister then. I have no access. I don't even know him. How can I even go study his life and then connect it to what I've discovered? And being an academic, I thought it will be improper to write just by observation or by the television noise that we all hear. So I forgot all about it and wrote leadership lessons for daily living. And I thought my job is done. But then 3.5 years ago, when the call came, to join the capacity building commission that was set up by the PM at that time as part of Mission Karmi Yogi to become the member HR. I went in and within a year I realized here is a flesh and blood example who starts off his journey in, as we all know, maybe selling tea on the platform for a railway station, but negotiating the complexities of all the barriers in Indian politics that you can look at, and not, becoming a corporator is so difficult, but goes on to become the prime minister of a country. And what is admirable about him was the way he functioned, and being the commission, part of the committee which reports to him, I could see him at close quarters, understand how we thought, how we advised and guided us in what we had to do. And a year later, I took the courage to go ask him, I've done this research. I think a lot of this fits you. Can I have your permission to write about you? This book is a book on Indic leadership, trying to bring out the concepts of Indic leadership. But we need a flesh and blood example, because when we write, we say Aurobindo was like this, Vivekananda was like that, Yudhishthira was like this, Bhishma was like that. And today's generation will say it's all of the past. They can't even relate to it. But here is a relatable example. So I thought I should write about him. He said, I have 3 conditions for you. If you agree to those 3, I can consider it. He said, first, he said, 400 से ज्यादा किताबें हैं जो मोदी बख्त ने लिखे हुए हैं. So I don't want another Modi Bhakt ka book. Please don't waste your time. But if you can write a book on Indic leadership and you want to use me as an exemplar, I'm okay with it. But it's not about me, it's about Indian leadership. For an academic author, that is music to your ears. You know, it's something extraordinary to say that I only want to be a case study. And he said something else. He said, if you discover something which I can be better at, please remember to tell me that. It's very rare for a person to even speak like that. And he has nothing to gain. He's one-on-one with me. No, the outside world won't even know what he tells me. The second condition he put was, he said, everybody thinks leadership comes from outside. लोग सोचते हैं कि बाहर से आना पड़ेगा leadership की ज्ञान. But भारत में इतना पारंपरिक ज्ञान है, इसके बारे में आप लिखना चाहिए और एक विश्व गुरु का संदेश एक किताब के माध्यम से बाहर लोगों के लिए ये जानना चाहिए कि लीडरशिप के बारे में इतना नॉलेज है हमारे देश में. So he said it's a book which has to be a global book. So he said, write it in English, let it be a global edition. It should be available for everybody in the world. And the third condition he put is not mine to fulfill, it's for every Indian to fulfill. He said, एक किताब पढ़ने के बाद देश के लिए, देश की सेवा के लिए 1000 लीडर्स निकलना चाहिए. Now, that's up to you. You have to buy the book, you have to read it, but more importantly, you have to live the message. What I have captured is a very, very small part of it. My research notes are exhaustive. I had to do 50 years of studying his life, from the 17th year till 2 years ago as his prime minister. What I've discovered is actually 8 to 10 books. Every chapter, my colleagues at Cornell told me, every chapter is 4 or 5 PhDs in hiding. No, we have to bring it out. Only then the depth of the wisdom will come out. It's a wide book. I sacrificed depth for width because I had to capture Indian knowledge as much as I could. It's academic, so 50 pages of my research notes. My research notes are actually 200 pages. I thought 250-page book, if I put 200 pages of research notes, nobody will read it. So I just put the most important 50 pages of it. A lot of Sanskrit is there, so a very detailed etymological explanation of Sanskrit terms are there. To me, it's possibly, I would look at it, it is a leadership which the world needs. It's not just about Prime Minister or India. The last chapter, the epilogue, I call the Dharma of Legacy and the Legacy of Dharma. I try to articulate what is the Dharma of legacy itself and what is the legacy of Narendra Modi's Dharma. How the Purusharthas are so important, and his Delhi declaration of the 4 Ps, where he talks about people, planet, peace and prosperity. Is it even attainable? How are we different? And I've not criticized any work of anybody. I've tried to combine the best of the Western literature and the best of Eastern literature, essentially hinting to the West. You know, you guys have done a lot of rigorous research and discovered a lot in the last 100 years, but it is around 3,000 years a little late because we discovered it 3,000 years ago. Whether it's Sadharanikaran from Bharata's Natya Shastra or the conversation on governance between Bhishma and Yudhishthira, what I have not written is a conversation between Rama and Bharata in Ramayana about good governance, to Kautilya and the way he describes it. And I want to conclude saying what Professor Vora said now. In India, we don't celebrate leaders. We celebrate people who express leadership. The West celebrates expression and manifestation of the ego as power and control over others. We celebrate Indriya Nigraha, Indriya Vijayi as great, the aham to be sublimated, and the power within to be unleashed. Finally, the Vedic message that Vivekananda gave as the motto for the Ramakrishna order, and I think for every human being, he said, Atmano Mokshartam Jagathitayacha. I think we are fortunate to live in a situation where our Prime Minister personifies this message. And if every one of us in this country at this point of time decide to bring out the power within and see our evolution as a manifestation, our evolution come through as a manifestation of societal good, I think our jobs will be done. And Vikasit Bharat, we don't have to wait for 25 more years. I'm sure it will happen earlier. Essentially, there's a Modi, there's a Vivekananda hiding in every one of us. Now it's up to us to believe it, get it expressed as the power within. Otherwise, it'll just be a book. And that is not what this book is to serve. And to conclude, the book within a month became a national bestseller. It's in the sixth reprint. It's doing very well in US and UK. And all the proceeds that goes from the sales of this book will go to the PM Cares. And we're hoping that in some way or the other, it will continue to impact this nation and the world at large. So thank you once again for this opportunity.
All right. So thank you very much for laying the landscape of the book, and thank you for writing the book and sharing the context of it. I think some of you might have read the book, some of you might not have, but I'm sure the books are available outside, and people can look at it later. But what I'd like to request, Dr. Adya, to you is that you've been in public leadership, and there's a whole chapter on public leadership in the book. And the public leadership book, the chapter talks about aspects of understanding power and motivation. So I'd really like you to share about your experiences of public leadership as described in the book. Of course, you've directly worked with the PM, and if you would share examples of him or other examples, that would be very nice. Thank you.
So, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, panelists, and friends. First of all, I'd like to compliment Balu for writing this book. The book is different. This book is different in two ways, in more than one way, but at least two things I can think of. The first and the foremost is that it is a book on the theory of leadership in which he has boldly taken example of one leader. I mean, citing the example of one leader to write on the leadership theory is something different. The second thing is that it combines the theoretical framework which is available in the Western concepts of leadership with the Indic concepts of leadership. And it is for the first time that we see that there is a serious discussion about the Indic style of leadership. In fact, we need to develop it further. Our own ancient wisdom gives all the lessons on leadership, and our country has got so many leaders who have followed that. So I compliment Balu for this book. Excellent book. Friends, all of you know that I worked closely with Mr. Modi in two capacities. One, when I was Principal Secretary to Chief Minister of Gujarat when Mr. Modi was here between 2003 and 2006. And then second time when I became Finance Secretary, Revenue Secretary in Delhi. So that time one had very close interaction and one had close working relationship with him. Now what I would like to give examples, some of the examples from his leadership style and also from the leadership style of one more person, Mr. Arun Jaitley, with whom also I had a privilege of working. So Balu's book gives framework of what makes people a good leader. He has given some 7-8 concepts of what makes a leader a good, what makes a person good leader. What are some of these strengths which we find in Mr. Modi as per the framework, whatever is available? So first thing is ability of a leader to visualize big goals. It's a rare thing. Some of us can't even think of big things. We can't even think of good things for ourselves. But here is a person who visualizes big things for the country. So that visualization ability is the first one. Second ability, of course, all of you know, is his communication ability. He is a communicator par excellence. Excellent communication ability. And also his connection, human connection with everyone. He connects to every human being one-to-one, very intimately connects with people. And many of you must have got this experience of him, his connection with the human being. His listening ability. Some of you may not know that when we have meetings with him in Delhi, for example, if we are discussing the union budget, he would sit through 5 hours, 6 hours, listen to each one of us patiently, ask important questions. A great listener. And he's always in the present. When, if you suppose you happen to meet him one to one also, he will look into your eyes and talk so intimately, and he will give all his attention to you even if you are meeting him personally, and he will not show any sign of fidgeting even if you are overshooting the time. This is the kind of human connectedness and his ability to connect with you. The next is he goes into nitty gritty of things, and that's why it makes him a great learner. I mean, you must have seen the way I have seen, because I worked with him when he was the chief minister way back in 2003 to 6, and the way he has evolved himself by becoming a very good learner. That is what one has to learn from his life, how to learn things. He goes into nitty gritty. Also, he's got outstanding memory power. All of us know that. I mean, he doesn't forget things. And it was so difficult for bureaucrats like us, because he will give us instruction and not even forget about it. So we have to fulfill it, you know. So very difficult thing for us to handle. But the best part is he would never get angry. I mean, amazing capacity to hold back anger. He doesn't forget. We, as principal secretary to CM, he gives an instruction. We write down in the diary, but there are too many instructions in one sitting that we forget one of them. Second time he'll say, ये उसका कुछ हुआ, फिर हम फिर से सॉरी सर भूल गया, फिर से करेंगे. Even third time he will say, हसमुख भाई हमारी वो जो बात हुई थी उसका कुछ हुआ. This is the way he reminds you. I mean, what a greatness in terms of holding back anger. Otherwise, he has a right to be angry. कि ये सब क्या हो रहा है, मैं कितनी बार बोलूंगा आपको. Many of us become angry like that, but he never does that. So that kind of a ability to hold back anger is also there. And finally, he's got an intuitive ability to judge people. Very rarely he has gone wrong in selection of right person for the right job. Very rarely. Otherwise, his ability to identify something good in a person and put him in the right place, that's excellent. I mean, that's what I think. I'll give you two examples from his my personal example. One example is of human connection that he develops. So when I was working as principal secretary in his office, once I was getting the files disposed of. मतलब फाइल उनको दिखा रहे थे, उनसे साइन करवा रहे थे कि ये फाइल ऐसा है, फाइल ऐसा है. After the file work was over, he pressed the bell, called the peon. The peon came and lifted all the files and went out. Then I was just sitting there. So he says, हसमुख भाई ये जो peon है उसको जानते हैं आप? मैंने बोला नहीं, मैं तो नहीं जानता, बिकॉज उनके पियून थे. मैं तो अपने पियून का भी नाम याद नहीं रख सकता हूँ, तो उनके पियून को कैसे जानूंगा. सो ये प्रताप है, इसका नाम प्रताप है, और ये इसकी एक बहुत अच्छी क्वालिटी, आप कभी ट्राई करिएगा उससे. ही इज गॉट अ वेरी गुड हैंड राइटिंग. आप उनसे कभी लिखवाइएगा, अगर आपको कोई इनविटेशन कार्ड वगैरह भेजना है, कुछ अगर अच्छा फाइन राइटिंग करना है, तो यू कैन यूज हिम. आई वाज शॉक्ड. I mean, how can a chief minister be so connected to his own peon, in which he knows the good quality of his peon also? I mean, this is something which I found amazing. And I felt ashamed also, because at that time I was not at all careful about even remembering properly the names of 2 or 3 people who are serving you and your staff, you know. कभी कभी ये भी भूल जाते थे हम तो बेल लगाते थे, पियून आते थे, फाइल ले जाओ, फाइल लाओ, ये करो, पानी लाओ, चाय लाओ, इसके अलावा कुछ करते ही नहीं थे. That's one incident. The second incident is more recent. You'd be surprised that as Prime Minister sitting in Delhi, having been elected for the third time, when he came recently to Gujarat, he had sent us a list of projects he wants to review. Gujarat के इतने project का मुझे review करना है. And then it was already getting late. His schedule was getting late, but still, few of us were asked to remain present in the review. We were waiting. At quarter to 11 in the night, he is able to meet us and discuss the projects of Gujarat. And believe me, so many important projects of Gujarat, including tourism projects, riverfront project, gift city, so many projects he would discuss. It went on till 12:15 in the night. 1.5 घंटा गुजरात के प्रोजेक्ट की चिंता करते हैं यहाँ राजभवन में बैठ के जब अहमदाबाद आए. So what is this? It is the commitment to the cause, and there is a commitment that we want to make a difference to the country. It is not about just winning the position and just enjoying the power of being a PM. He has that worry about doing something for Gujarat also, and he doesn't at all let go in his hard work. मतलब काफी hard work. I'll also give one example of Mr. Jetli, man of no enemies, man with no enemies. He was such a fine person, great leader, appreciated by all political parties. He had no enemies. अजात शत्रु जिसको बोल सकते हैं वैसा आदमी थे वो. He was such a great person, and not a single person would have anything bad about him to say. इतना उनका personality था. इतने सरल आदमी भी थे. And when suppose some journalist goes to meet him, वो उनके लिए भी इतना आदर रखते थे, उनको खाना वाना खिलाते थे, कभी ये पकोड़ा मंगवाया, कभी कुछ मंगवाया. His connection with everybody was so great. एक GST council की मीटिंग में, this was the most useful quality that in him that was very handy for us to get through the GST, because all the states were having different opinion. It was he who was a consensus builder in the GST meeting. And then all the finance ministers, including from opposition party, they had such a regard for him that कोई भी डिस्कशन में कभी भी कोई डिस्प्यूट होता था, और अगर जेटली साहब ये बोल दे कि जोसेफ अब छोड़ दो, अब ये ठीक है मान जाओ, तो वो भी मान जाएंगे. कोई भी मिनिस्टर, nobody would ever say कि मेरा डिसेंट लिखो. इस तरह का उनका पर्सनालिटी था. So that was another good model to see. So I was lucky that I had a pleasure of working with these two great leaders. And some of these examples, of course, Balu's book also has given, but I thought I'll also talk out of my personal experience. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay. Now, I would like to request Mr. Shah to share his views on essential actions of leaders. I think in one of your chapters, you write about that the mosaic, one of the qualities of leaders is the mosaic of integrity, tenacity, resilience, and commitment. And I'd like to share your views on it and your examples about it. Thank you.
Good evening, friends. Good evening, our esteemed panelists, respected Sri Adiaji, Bala, and ma'am, and all my friends, ladies and gentlemen. I think today's panel discussion holds a significant place, because we are talking about not only the conventional leadership or a public leadership, I think so, because his leadership is deeply rooted with values. And for that, I think we should look at the basic guiding principle of Indic principles or Indic leadership. But I would say, यहाँ जितने गुजरात के लोग बैठे हैं बाला, this is a different state, his home state. So everything, जितना मुझे और आपको पता है, उतना ही उनको पता है. But we all have learned, we are observing that we would say him is a moving university. If you don't even know about him, if you don't even listen to him, but if you only observe, if you don't meet him also, if you only observe him, how he behaves, how he conduct himself in a crisis, how we think of the lower strata of the society, about the environment, about the global good, I think observation, seeing him is a learning, and we all have witnessed. I think जो आप मेरे साथ सब लोग सहमत हो गए यहाँ पर कई ऐसे experiences, so many. How he picks up the waste, a paper on the dais and putting in his pocket. How he himself conduct discipline. So there are many things, and I was thinking कि इतने सारे बड़े पैनलिस्ट हैं और मैं उसमें क्या इट्स लाइक शोइंग अ सूरज को आईना दिखाने वाली बात है बिकॉज देयर आर सो मेनी गुड लीडर्स सिटिंग ऑन डायस लाइक मुकेश भी उनको सुनते सुनते हम बड़े हुए हैं बट व्हाट आई शेयर विथ यू बिकॉज आई हैव सीन हिम in 1988. So the consistency about him as a leader, he was not in a public life also those days, and not in a BJP. Forget BJP, he was as a pracharak. A same consistency about morning में उठना, meditation, about his conduct himself, reading, the work. जो पहले था अभी आई थिंक पीएम तीसरी बार भी हुए आई हैव नॉट सीन अ सिंगल चेंज और आई वांट टू टेल यू दैट जब से 88 से यहाँ तक ही हैज बीन सेम मतलब कि पावर यहाँ तक नहीं आया है द सेम मैन एज ही वाज इन 88 आल्सो व्हाट वी हैव सीन कैसे कपड़े पहनना कैसे शेड्यूलिंग करना मीटिंग्स कैसे करना एंड द कम्युनिकेशन जो अडिया साहब ने अभी बताया if there are 400 people sitting in a hall or there are 50,000 people sitting in a rally हर एक को लगेगा ये मेरे से बात कर रहा है अब this ability you will not find and three principle as you Bala you rightly said about the personal leader is about the karmashilta is like purposeful action what you say what you have written in the book seva dharma I think leadership is beyond his leadership is beyond the authority, I would say. And the second thing, what you have said, and Sri Krishna Bhagwan also said, कर्मण्यवादी कारस्ते महाफलेषु कदाचन. जितने भी आपके ऊपर पर्सनल एलिगेशन मैलिफाइड अटैक्स पर्सनल अटैक्स आप काम करते रहो नेगेटिविटी इज नेवर मतलब इज कम इन हिज वे ही हैज बीन डूइंग work for the 140 crore people or maybe for national interest, the peace and prosperity and safety of the nation. आपने इतनी सारी गालियां अगर किसी लीडर्स को दुनिया में अगर कहीं मिली है और फिर भी वो अपना काम करते रहे तो मैं यहाँ कोई उनका कोई आई एम नॉट हियर टू जस्ट से अ गुड थिंग और मे बी सम ग्लोरीफाइड थिंग or a sycophancy. What we have observed and what you have learned and what everybody has seen, whether he is in power or not. But that second thing is the resilience, the consistency, the action. I think action everybody has. मैं गुजरात का ही आपको example. Forget the Ayushman Bharat, forget the UPI or GST or National Swanidhi se Samruddhi or Swachhta Abhiyan. Gujarat, everybody was criticizing the Statue of Unity. क्या कर रहे हैं ये हो जाएगा पैसा कहाँ से आएगा इतना पैसा कैसे आउट ऑफ ऑल ऑड्स ऑल क्रिटिसिज्म जैसे बढ़िया साहब ने बताया द विजन टू थिंक बिग विजन फॉर द एग्जीक्यूशन एंड अपने आसपास जितने लोग हैं उसको हाईएस्ट पोटेंशियल से उनके पास मोटिवेट करना एंड स्टैच्यू ऑफ यूनिटी हैज बिकम नाउ द रियलिटी forget the revenue and expense we are far away from that expense so and then the pride the communication what he was trying is not only to inform or instruction communication is not for the personal gain also but his communication was to inspire I would say to inspire for the national pride inspiring motivating and unite the people so that was the skill of the communication. The other thing what you, ma'am, has just requested is adaptability. From 88-90 to now, he was having a pager first. इसके पहले EPABX यहाँ पर एक बहुत बड़ा अधिवेशन हुआ था, and I was fortunate to there to work as a volunteer. एंड तब तक बोला कि इतना बड़ा अधिवेशन हो रहा है जहाँ पर 2000-5000 लोग गांधीनगर में, तो एक दूसरे से कम्युनिकेट कैसे करेंगे? और तब तक तो पार्टी को, बीजेपी को कोई टेलीफोन लाइन भी देना मुश्किल, नॉट मुश्किल बट इट वाज वेरी डिफिकल्ट. देन ही हैज फाउंड कि ईपीएबीएक्स नहीं, वॉकी टॉकी, मुकेश भाई, एंड देन ही हैज गैदर्ड, he has called someone and then created a communication skill जहाँ सारे लोग वर्ल्ड से यहाँ पर आए थे, and then he has set up a communication skill. So वहां से लेके पेजर, मोबाइल, लैपटॉप, but one thing is that he was for the modernization, not the westernization. ये एक बहुत बड़ी चीज, how the technology helps the poor people is not only the westernization. That was because he was firmly believer of the Indian tradition and Indic civilizations also. Second thing I'll say, very few people, what we have learned and what we all should learn. हम सब ने देखा है इंडियन पासपोर्ट की वैल्यू नाउ एंड देन. I am not criticizing any leader. All have worked. All the other leaders, all the parties have worked their best. But now what you are realizing, the value of an Indian passport and the proud to us and our Indian diaspora. From Sone ki Chidiya to a sustainable mode and then surviving and then now thriving mode. Apart from that, I can see a Punajagran, a reincarnation of India, what you are seeing now. और एक स्वदेश यात्रा, स्वराज यात्रा और दांडी यात्रा से लेके, if you can inspire people to work for a developed यात्रा, developed country यात्रा, मतलब आप एक developed यात्रा में जुड़ जाइए. And what is the goal of 2047? We all are working as capacity building or whether QCR or Invest India. We can see how he is integrating thing, putting a goal in front of us and a top-down approach. Corporate company ho or institute or organization ho, everybody see a leader. How leader behaves, उसकी working style कैसी है, integrity कैसी है, what he says, वो manipulate चीज करते हैं नहीं करते हैं, how he ability of execution, and people works after that, and we all are seeing. And the other thing, the speed of a Jandan account, a scale, and a quality. So now what he has given us, the quality mandate, because now India deserves and demands the quality of life to the people. Second, because Hasmukh Adhia sir yahan baithe hain, the example of a gift city. Sir will agree with me. Everybody was laughing. कि ये कहाँ हवा में हवाई महल उड़ा रहे हो आप, कि ये चीज़ कैसे हो सकती है जहाँ पर टैप वाटर इज अ पोर्टेबल वाटर, जहाँ पर डिस्ट्रिक्ट कूलिंग है, जहाँ पर जीरो वेस्ट है, एंड एवरी वेस्ट बीन कन्वर्ट इनटू द मैन्योर. एंड व्हेन आई सो आल्सो, एंड आई वाज लिटिल अमेज्ड, एंड नॉट अमेज्ड बट आई वाज लिटिल स्पेक्टिकल आल्सो. तो बोला सर, मैंने दिस इज आई हैव नॉट सीन in 50 countries and Hong Kong and Singapore we have seen, but he told that day also that this will become a reality. And before for 15 years he told us that from BKC to Gift it will take 3 hours by bullet train. Everybody was laughing. And now what happened after the Gift launch, Lehman Brothers happened, all meltdown, global meltdown, but he stood with, because he was a chief minister, he was not in the center also. Again thoda sa chala, and then ILFS thing happened. So see the resilience and a commitment, achieving goal, relentless effort, perseverance. ये सारी चीजें अगर मैं गिनता रहूं, because it's like a, and I don't want to say the routine words आप जो देख रहे हैं, सबका साथ सबका विकास, about जितने आप रिजल्ट देख रहे हैं, प्रधानमंत्री आवास योजना या फिर उज्ज्वला स्कीम, all the strata of a society, or maybe a minority have benefit more. That shows कि राजा का कोई धर्म नहीं होता, राजा का कोई कुटुंब नहीं होता. And we are so fortunate. We are so fortunate to have him. He is behaving. जो देख रहे हैं आज के 600 साल के बाद, ऐसा या कई सालों के बाद ऐसा एक इंडिया का अवसर या इंडिया का चांस आया है, that we can be a विश्व गुरु. एंड विश्वगुरु इंडिया को उन्होंने बेस्ट ट्रस्टेड कॉमन फ्रेंड बना दिया इंडिया में. Can you believe it? Globally, he has achieved a best trusted common fan. So that is, and then लोग बोलते थे जिसने कॉर्पोरेशन की चुटनी जिसने नहीं लड़ी है, एमएलए की नहीं लड़ी है, और वो आज इंटरनेशनल राजनीति करने चले हैं. So we all have seen, and then we are, this book you have written rightly. I would say पहले वो उन्होंने पढ़ा और उसके बाद उन्होंने ये इंडिक लीडरशिप चला और आपने बुक लिखा, उसके बाद ये हुआ, we don't know, but actually that resembles so well, Bala, and thanks to you and many congratulations to you. This will not only inspire, but this will become a rule book for our generation to how to become a great leader. Or sometime I observe कि some leaders 5 साल का सोचते हैं, भी 5 साल तक मैं हूँ इलेक्शन तक. Some leaders thinks of a generation, but this leader thinks of a yug or era that many generation will learn from this thing. Thank you so much for patiently hearing. Thank you so much.
All right. So before I open it to the audience to ask questions, I'm going to ask a couple of questions to each of you. And I think you've rightly pointed out that you used concepts that you discovered from India, from the Indian scriptures about leadership, and then you applied it to our PM. Now, my question is, you've also been a leader in your own right, yeah, in many ways. What are one or two things that you do which are also represented in the book, which will help us to understand that it's not just him, but each one of us can actually be a leader?
You put me in a spot. Well, I'll tell you what I did not do, and that's why I'm doing it now. See, Swami Vivekananda wants that when you get into the space of social sector leadership, especially, you'll somehow forget the work at the center, and you'll become the work at the center. And that's a danger he wants. He says, just don't stand on a pedestal and say, here, my poor man, take my 5 cents. Consider yourself fortunate that work is getting done through you. So we all very easily in Karma Yoga say of Falatyaga, but it's not Falatyaga. It's real Karma Yoga is Kartatva Tyaga, where you even give up the identity of, you just allow the force to work through you. I think at some point of time, at a very young age when you start, I had the former Chief Minister of Karnataka write my biography. It became a big TV serial. You get a lot of things and you start believing that you must be great. And after some time, I started looking in my own life and I realized it's not about tribal development that mattered to me. It was more about I should be doing tribal development. So the I is a cancer which comes in without our knowledge even. And I slipped. And when you slip, you realize that that is a horrible thing to do. So I think many of us actually, and the joy, the peace, the wonderful relationship I had with myself and the higher force disappeared overnight. It is so valuable that when you miss it, then you really want it more. And today I'm very conscious that it's not about the work at the center. It's not about me doing the work at the center, but it's more important that the work at the center gets done. So it's not about I doing something, it's about something getting done. And that's a huge difference. And when I was watching the Prime Minister, that's exactly how he operates. Though everybody else on the outside looks at the politician in him and presumes that that is the Prime Minister, I think there's a clear differentiation of that. The second thing is, many times we get stuck in the roles we perform. And our identity is driven by the role that we have rather than the self that we are. I think separating role from self is an exemplary act of leadership. And that's what something which I strive for constantly. Today I have a role in the national government. Tomorrow I'll be back in my forest. So it doesn't really matter. But myself is still trying to stay unaltered, trying its best. That's a sadhana. I never say all the time, but that's a sadhana. But at the same time, I'm fascinated. Somebody who has been in such public light, 78% approval rating, very rarely can a third term in India as happens as a prime minister. But his clarity of what role I am playing, and that's just a role. And that's what I think keeps Sita Prajna alive.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your honest response and really deep response. I hope we all learn from that. Thank you. Dr. Adi, I think I
I
will.
thought it was the same question.
Same question? Okay, go ahead. I just wanted to also focus on self-responsibility as an aspect. So I thought that would be nice to hear.
Yeah, actually, for last 15, 20 years, I happened to learn the concept of karma yoga from my Guruji. And I try to adhere to that. It is an Indian wisdom, ancient Indian wisdom, which defines leadership. So what is karma yoga? Karma yoga is all about remaining committed to your job or whatever you are doing without carelessness, without selfishness, and without ego. This is the simple definition of karma yoga. So ever since I learnt about this ancient wisdom, I always try to maintain myself in that definition. I try to do things like this. One more aspect of karma yoga is acceptance of result, good or bad. That is a must, because in career of any civil servant there are many ups and downs, and those are the defining moments when, if you give up, if you say no, government has been so unfair to me, and if you give up, then you are no good. But if you continue to be committed even in those defining moments, then there is no stopping back. The government has to realize your worth some other time, and then you will have to get an important role. So those are the things one has to accept. So this is what I try to do out of whatever he has prescribed.
Thank you. अच्छा, so आपको मेरा question ये था कि what drives you to be a leader? And what?
No, drive, because I would simply definition मेरा ये है leaders जो है जो leaders create करे. That how simple the definition of the leader. But to become a leader is not only creating your balance sheet or creating a landmarks, your factories and buildings and all. The leadership is all about how you keep your employees happy, how you take care of their well-being, and how more you are more sustainable for the environment. I think that's a skill every businessman or a leader should do. And how you inspire others, how you inspire every time, and how you become a student every day morning. So till today, I go every day morning is like a first day of my life. And that's how you keep going, because it's not something every day you leadership is not a leader, he's a trustee. He's a custodian of his family or his business group or his organization. Once leadership is thinking of ownership, then you are gone. So don't behave or don't be like you are a leader in your organization or family or in your company. That's a simple definition I have.
All right, thank you. So before I open it to the audience, I have a thought struck me. And the thought was that this room looks really, it's an amazing room with a lot of people, but there are just too few women here. Yeah. And if I hadn't been invited, we would have had no women here either. So what do we do about it? I don't think this represents India. Yeah. I don't think this is fair, and I don't think we will ever grow if we don't have more women in our spaces. So. Okay. He, yes. So.
In our history, there are many women leaders.
Correct.
We can also include them in the book.
Correct. Yeah. So that's a question to all of you. Any thoughts on it? Sorry to put you on the spot.
No, it's not on the spot. I'm happy to be in this spot because I think traditionally and generationally we have presumed that we have to provide the space for women to be a leader. And I think all my thinking, everything is driven by Swami Vivekananda and his message. He even says, what right have you got to say I will ameliorate the conditions of women? He says, it's all nonsense. He says, all you have to do is step aside. And rest the women will take care. And that's exactly what we have not learned to do, because we want to crowd out spaces and we just naturally want to take it on.
And therefore, we need somebody who will actually open the spaces to say that they can crowd us out. And I don't know how many of you would remember, I think last year's Republic Day, not this year's Republic Day, last year's Republic Day, if I remember correctly, we had, everybody felt proud. I was watching, I was sitting there in the audience and I was watching. It's a matter of pride for everybody. But sometimes you feel whether the pride is cosmetic, whether it's really internal. And to me, why aren't more women in this book is a great question. And somebody asked me, I think earlier also, and I tried to respond to that. I said my limitation is I didn't really go deep into the research, except Maitreyi and Gargi and all the others. I did a little bit, but it was not deep enough. And that's a lacuna in my work. And I have told myself the next work will only be looking at that and writing about how it will be.
Look forward to that. Thank you.
No, I think at present this is the thing which is missing in our society, but very soon it's going to change. I can tell you that, because if you see the result of SSC board today, majority of the merit holders are women, and it's very soon going to happen that women are going to occupy the commanding heights of Indian society and economy both. And in terms of hard work, sincerity, I mean, I have always found women employees to be outmatching the men counterparts. They're very good.
That we know.
So it's going to happen.
I think those have answered.
All right. Yes, you have a question. I think somebody will send a mic to you. Yeah.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Arpita Brahmbhatt. I am taking care of HR of Lilavati Foundation, Gujarat. I have been into hospital field since last 14 years. I have been into clinical, non-clinical and HR operations. My question is that when you work with ethics completely and you are not able to manipulate people, it becomes very tough and challenging for you. So in such scenario, how to manage smartly?
I think there is no question in my mind at all, because many times if you're ethical because as a matter of conviction, there is no issue. If you're ethical out of convenience, it will be an issue all the time. Because if you only conveniently want to achieve something, you're also manipulating everybody around you. So I think we need to ask ourselves, am I ethical out of conviction or am I ethical for the convenience sake? And I leave it for you to answer yourself.
Great, sir. Thank you so much.
There are questions at the back. Yeah, Mike using.
Hello, I am a student. My question is that the one of the major terms which is used in Indic leadership is Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. So, and or we can say being a cosmopolitan. Now, if I want to go and study abroad, there is a little conflict that some people say that this is a case of brain drain or something like that. But cosmopolitanism allows me to do that. So, what should be the mindset in such a case for a student?
I went abroad. I studied, right?
Yes, sir.
I think it's. I don't think knowledge gain has got boundaries.
All right.
And Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam is not artificially designed by geographical boundaries. It's a deep genetical appreciation of life is one. An
Absolutely.
Advaitic sense of oneness and disidentifying yourself from yourself
Right.
is a greater challenge that you have to face and worry about small things like this. To me, these are very silly expressions of separation. The real challenge is wherever you are, if you don't feel society is mine, the whole world is mine, you'll never grow. It doesn't matter. But coming back in a very practical way, if I were to answer you, Mahatma Gandhi said it so beautifully. He said, I would like my doors and windows of my house to be open so all the breeze can blow in from the world. The problem with Indians is when all the breeze from outside blows, it's blowing away Indian breeze outside. And we are okay with it. I think retaining what we are good at, not being emotive about our scriptural strengths, but looking at it evidentially. That's what I have tried to do in this book. I've only captured evidentially what the strengths of this country and great civilization is. And not worrying about whether somebody, many civilizations have their own context.
Yes.
What I only say is my life culturally appropriate to the context in which I'm living. If I'm contextually relevant, culturally appropriate, that is a real Vishwaguru you can be. Vivekananda said, life is about that constant expansion, that growth.
Yes.
And today, if you're worried about a child starving in your country, and tomorrow you're genuinely losing your sleep because a child is starving in Sudan, that is Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. I'll stop there.
Thank you.
There's a question at the back, and I'll come to you. Take that.
For your knowledge, that it will be a brain gain also, because Adia sir is bringing all the foreign university in gift now.
Yeah. Good evening to everyone, and thank you so much for the session. Thanks, Dr. Bala, for the book. I look forward to reading it. Now, I have two quick questions. One is to you and one is to Dr. Adia. Now, the question to you is that you've written a book on the Indic leadership. I would like to understand that all these qualities typically of a leader, making more leaders, being patient, being a good listener, all of that. What are the unique Indic traits that you've seen that are typically not there in the Western leaders that are pure play Indian? And the question to you, Dr. Adia, which is like any leader must take some tough decision. And there are many times I'm sure that Mr. Modi has taken. So carrot and stick approach. What are the evidences that you have seen in your personal capacity wherein he has taken a stick approach, even though he doesn't get angry very often? So I would like to understand that angle of Mr. Modi. Thank you.
And then I'll answer, but after Rajesh.
No. So taking tough decision is not the same thing as being angry. You can take tough decisions without being angry. So I'll just give you an example of GST implementation. So it so happened that it was already delayed. Something which was announced in the budget of 2006 by the then finance minister, saying that within 3 years we are going to bring GST. It didn't happen. It was already delayed. Then this government came. And when I was inducted as Revenue Secretary, Mr. Modi said, I want this by 1/4/2017. That's it. Not more than 1 year that you will get. And so we had to work towards it. It so happened that as we are coming closer to the implementation date, the unrest became very obvious. And you'd be surprised that some of his own party leaders and senior ministers, they would say that sir is determined to implement it, but we can see that it may create a lot of chaos and there are a lot of elections coming around. So please persuade sir not to go ahead so quickly. So this was the kind of unrest which was happening. So with great difficulty, I go to him and say, sir, it looks to me that it's going to be a little difficult. And certainly from my side also, I'm not ready to implement it from 1/4/2017. So please give me at least 3 months more. So with great difficulty, I could get a concession of 3 months from him. But he was determined to take the tough decision in the interest of the country. And other leaders thought that we may lose the election, but he never worried about it. He said there is some tough decision which we have to take in the interest of the country. And that's what he did. So that's different. I mean, without being angry, you can always be determined. You can take tough decisions in life.
I quickly supplement what he said because I had the opportunity of a lot of one-on-one conversation, a separate book by itself. I can't put everything into this book. I asked him this exact question. How do you take decisions? Because all leadership is all about executive decision making. So we asked how. He said, "ये तो बहुत मुश्किल मुझे मुश्किल ही नहीं लग रहा है." And I was quite shocked. He said, "I have only one filter. I ask myself, ये देश के लिए भला होगा क्या? अगर मुझे हाँ का आंसर मिलता है तो मैं कर देता हूँ. इसमें तो प्रॉब्लम ही नहीं है मुझे." तो such a simple filter that he had. And in the book I write about a conversation of Prahlad and Bali. And I talk about which is more difficult. What is more important for a leader? Is it forgiveness or expression of anger? How do you manage it? What is the distinction? And so beautiful conversation. I summarize it in a very short way. Each has his own place. But anger in the context in which I write, why Prime Minister Modi is not getting angry so critical is Bhagavad Gita. There's an entire, I think we can do a PhD on emotional management. The way Krishna describes how anger can cloud us, and he describes all the steps in which we lose ourselves. And that is exactly why it's dangerous for a leader to get angry. Now, coming back to your first question, what are the distinct differences between why I compare Western and Indic models? The West celebrates an individual. In the West, the more famous statement is, if you don't have people behind you, you're not a leader. So your identity comes from the followers, not from yourself. Whereas for us, the identity comes from the actions we perform. So for us, the definition of leadership, I would say, it's an activity you perform or the actions that you do. What is the activity? The activity of mobilizing yourself and your resources and of those around people around you for doing something societally constructive amid enormous uncertainty. The West can never deal with uncertainty. The West demands competence to perform. That's why they celebrate competence. India celebrates uncertainty. We don't understand it. India celebrates our opportunity to perform from zones of your incompetence. Arjuna was incompetent at that moment of time, but he still performed after listening to Krishna. And that leadership gets stimulated. So I think that's a distinct difference. Second, where the personality and person is not celebrated, but his actions are. The second is leadership is seen as authority over or power over. Like even to say the Western construct of academic work on this, Archie Brown in his book writes the myth of a strong leader. To me, it didn't resonate with me because you measure the metric of measuring strength is power over others, power expressed without you, outside of you. Whereas for us, it is power within you. It is the Indriya Nigraha. Kautilya writes it so beautifully. He says there are only two responsibilities for a leader, Loka Sangraha and Yoga Kshema. The welfare of society and also protecting the securities of people, of those they've already acquired and enabling acquisition of future securities. Look at the way Kautilya interprets it. He says this can happen only when the ruler is an Indriya Vijayi. That he has to conquer it. Hunger for name, fame, visibility, etc. Which is a very high level of thinking. That is the power within. So it is power without there, it is power within here. It is aham getting expressed there, it is aham getting sublimated here, not suppressed, sublimated here. It is about personal evolution equated to manifestation of societal good. There it is never even looked at personal evolution, it's only personal expression. I think there's a huge distinction, and that is why this leadership is what the world needs today. That leadership and the cheap imitation of it is counterfeit leadership that has caused so much of misery in the world today. What it needs is this Indic thinking that can save the world and its future.
Can someone give a mic?
I think mic. यहाँ भी दो तीन mic
और फिर उधर से।
यहाँ से भी एक ले लीजिए।
I could have done even without a mic. Well, first and foremost, let me compliment each one of you, including the coordinator Niharika ji, Bala, you, Asmukbhai, Jakshay. You're all exemplary. And the best thing is, don't look at the number of audience here, because programs at AMA, we not only go live on YouTube, but they are documented. And I can say for sure, this is going to be viral, Bala. Each one of you, what you spoke, is going to be remembered for a long time. I have a question which I would like each one of you to maybe crisply answer the way you would like. For us at AMA, and as I was telling, Hasumbai knows, Bala knows, Jakshabhai knows, we have conducted 25 AMA weeks on Indian wisdom for management. The relevance of ancient Indian wisdom with modern management is something that we have very passionately, pursued here. In this context, I am so delighted that this Indic leadership model, and as is rightly written on the board, blends ancient wisdom with modern governance. If I have to ask each one of you, what is that trait? Because we're talking of the legacy of Narendra Modi. If you have to relate him to one of our ancient Indian wisdom models, say Krishna, say Chanakya, say Ram, who would you associate him closest with in terms of, the ancient wisdom? Because he has blended it perfectly, with modern governance. So I would request all of you, including Niharika ji at the end, you also please, we would love to listen to your answers. Starting from Bala.
As the author, I'm going to take the prerogative saying I'll be the last to answer, not as a difficult question, but I have already written it to the book and I'll explain where I've written it. Then you'll be surprised. In the last chapter in epilogue.
You are thrown a bouncer. So, but no. But I would say I would resemble him as a combination of Sri Bhagwan Ram and Shivaji Maharaj. To be very frank, I want to just relate Ram in the sense that doing righteous thing, dharma, seva, and karmashilta. And Shivaji is like education, courage, and a pride for a nation and a Hindu nation. So it's a perfect combination of Shiva Bhagwan Ram and Shivaji.
Actually, if you see, all the Indic wisdom leads us to the same concept of seva, karma yoga, not worrying too much about the self, but caring more for the society, ethical leadership. All this you find in all the models that you are talking about. So in a way, it's a combination of personality of all of them that you find. So the wisdom and the principles are the same. So I don't think we can really distinguish. There may be a little bit of difference in style of people, but otherwise each one of the leaders that you mentioned, they are following dharma and they are following what is right for the society. So in a way, it's very difficult to say that one model or the other. It's a combination.
Okay, all right. So I definitely do not know enough about our PM to be able to answer that question as to who would I liken him to. But I think one of the things that when I read the book and I thought about it, I think one of the things that somebody who espouses leadership is to completely espouse the fact that I don't know. Yeah. To come from a place of knowledge versus coming from a place of I don't know, I need to listen, I need to learn, I need to understand, I need to pay attention, to me is very, very crucial for being able to do what you need to do. And I think that's what impressed me as I read through the book, as somebody who completely is with this whole thing of I don't know. And in today's day and age, where you can basically, where knowledge is celebrated, for a leader to have that negative capability of being okay with not knowing and then moving ahead to figure out is a skill that I think is extremely important, and he seems to show that in his work. Thank you.
So I think you'll have to all bear with me for a reading out from my own book. So I'm going to read this first. Narendra Modi is likely to be amongst the most studied and analyzed leaders of history. And then it's a hyphen, so that's a pause. There are leaders who row. A lot of them have rowed in the past. There are leaders who steer. And then there are those rare leaders who change the frame of analysis itself. And that's why you can't compare him. They bring the destination towards us and within us. And let me explain. It's a very high level of abstraction I've brought in there, but if you think through it, you can get. Then earlier I tried to build it up to that. So I write, in the West, the philosophical discourse is often oscillated between deontology and consequentialism, focusing on the moral integrity of actions versus the outcomes. From an Indian civilizational worldview, we can trace the roots of this predicament to a fundamental rupture between the material and the sacred. That's been a struggle for India all the time. The object and the subject. The central idea of dharma combines the universal, the contextual, and most critically, the consciousness of the actor. It is through yoking oneself with the sacred core and that the ability to bridge divergences and forge commonality emerges. Unfortunately, for his entire public life, a man who's criticized creating the divergence is exactly the opposite. And I say to the great deal of responsibility and study, then I write this further. Modi's leadership brings this ability to fuse the binaries, eschew the extremes, and harmonize divergence. As we collectively face a convergence of destinies, yet a divergence of intentions, you're seeing the world today, this exact thing playing out, whether it's the Middle East or the Russian space. This is a paradigm for our times and for the future of an integrated world. He has, in fact, given the clue in how he thinks about these poles, his idea of the 4 Ps. And then I talk about the Purusharthas and all that. So to me, how do you compare a person who's changed the frame of analysis itself? So there's no comparison.
I think there was one more question.
Somebody there in the middle.
1 minute. We have time for one more question. You want to ask the question? We have time. Are you going to ask?
Rag,
Yeah.
you want to ask?
Yes.
I have to be a little partial because Rag works for us, so I should ask him.
I hope the question is not planted.
Oh, no.
Because he's.
So, good evening. My name is Jahan Kapoor and I'm from Nima University. So, I have a very particular question. As a student, I have observed in myself and some of my peers the habit of procrastination. And so, my question basically is, what practices does BM or the world leaders does to maintain the discipline in their own life? Like Mr. Shah sir has said, uh, every leader have immense with discipline and all. So, what practices does they do in this noisy world? Because as a student, I find it very difficult for myself to be focused on a particular thing. I am like a butterfly from this flower to this flower, and I don't know why, but I feel a little uncomfortable sometimes. That is it in me, or is that happen to everyone? That's all. Thank you.
It's a very practical problem for young people. You know, when at the Capacity Building Commission, when we first looking at what kind of course material we can put together for our officers who are extremely busy whole day and we still want them to acquire new competencies, we were thinking of courses which at least be 1 hour long. Then we started talking to people who are experts around the world and they told us 30 seconds is the best you can think of for attention span. Today I can say it's a time taken for a TikTok video, right? That's what your generation is. And the TikTok video is too long, you don't pay attention. So I think the real secret is not just Prime Minister Modi, it's the Indic thinking itself, where we celebrate ekagrate. We celebrate so many other things, which is a practice. It's a constant effort. It doesn't happen overnight. That's a real work. But in Prime Minister, what I have noticed, and I've always struggled to, I've not articulated in the book because I've not analyzed it enough to write, is Karma Yoga is for us different ways we all interpret Karma Yoga, right? But I think the Prime Minister also interprets, I'm not saying the only way he interprets, he also interprets Karma Yoga as an expression, as a strive for excellence in whatever he does. And when you're striving for excellence, you can't afford to procrastinate. So Professor Vora is here, I cannot speak in her presence, but my own analysis of organizational behavior I've seen is 3 major reasons why organizations start degenerating. And that's the time you recognize that this is going down. It's going to begin to go down. We all see trajectories going like that and coming down. The first is, we say, is simple things. When you tolerate mediocrity, right? And that's the beginning. Then you know this organization is now, and that's what I see in Prime Minister also, he can't tolerate mediocrity for him. The second is when you start procrastinating, or when you start thinking, okay, we can get it done tomorrow. You're very forgiving. In my own team, it happens. They'll come and say, sir, I worked the whole week. I couldn't complete this. And it's okay, give it to me next Monday. And it goes on, right? And that's actually the beginning of degeneration, institutional degeneration. The third is when you don't have the discipline to follow through on what you have said. If any of these 3, I'm a physician, we look for symptoms and then we elicit signs. So these are 3 classical symptoms from which you can elicit a lot of organizational degeneration signs. And I think the Prime Minister is trying to push the striving for excellence, this in not wanting to tolerate mediocrity, not just in his office, which is easy, but into the entire nation, a nation which doesn't want to excel, right? But getting that mindset to shift, it's very nice to appreciate him, praise him, but to imitate him is going to be a challenge for all of us. Even for his own colleagues and party members, it's a problem. So I think I would look at it that way. So for you, if you decide to tell yourself that what do you value more, if it is excellence, then you don't have to worry about getting distracted. Then focus will come. If it is just fun, well, that's the price you pay.
I'll just answer this question briefly. One is that if you have a well-articulated goal in your life, then you jump into action. But most of the people are procrastinating. They are not sure where they are going, only because they don't have a well-articulated goal in your life. So that's first thing. Second thing, meditation will help. Try some meditation.
Yes, last, really last question. Rag, who's asking? We're trying both. Okay.
Rag, you need a mic. The voice won't carry the rest of the room.
Okay. So my question is, how do you build trust as a leader? How do you build trust
Okay.
as a leader?
Actually, this is a very, very, very researched question in leadership space. No, people think that you have to trust your leader. It's actually the other way around. Trust begins with the leader trust everybody else. He trusts us to take this nation to Vikasit Bharat. He trusts us with so many mandates and responsibilities. So trust begets trust. And only when I trust you, that begets you to trust me. So leadership begets leadership. And that begins with trust begetting trust.
I am core faculty at SPIPA. As sir has also worked in the capacity building commission as a member, and Adia sir has also made a foundation at the SPIPA for Chintan Shibir and that. So how leadership motivate bureaucrat? My question is that because same officer working with the double efficiency, I have seen that same officer working with him, it inspires double capacity. So how they motivate bureaucrats?
I will not answer it directly, but I would like to answer it from, we went to the Honorable PM last 10 days ago and said, or 10, 15 days ago, the dates might be different. And we said we are trying to put together various things. He was reviewing our work and we're trying our future year's plans. And then I was talking about different things I'm thinking in the Indian knowledge system space for our bureaucrats. He said, oh, sab, theek hai. If you don't solve for one problem, your work will never get a solution. And we asked him, what is it? He said, if you cannot equate my purpose of existence, my purpose of life to societal good, you cannot make a difference. Any amount of training will not make a difference, he said. So I think what he can inspire is us with purpose of life. And if he has inspired that bureaucrat, that's why maybe the output doubled. Because his purpose of life would be serving citizens. And if that, he said, if you can do that in your courses and programs, India's problem is solved, he said.
Thank you. All right. So we now invite AMA to. Thank you so much. Yes, I think we can.
I personally have a high IQ, and this is what I call a perfect Friday night party. And I believe all of you who have gathered here also agree with me, and that's why you're all here. So firstly, I would like to thank all of you for coming here on a Friday evening and listening to a very insightful discussion on leadership. Dr. Vora, I would like to thank you next for asking the tough questions. In fact, I would like to audaciously quote a research by Dr. Daniel Lemon, who's scientifically proven that women are better leaders because their frontal lobe is far better than the male. And it's science, it's not gyan. So there's science absolutely behind it. So thank you for bringing that up. Balu, very grateful for not only sharing your experiences with the Honorable Prime Minister, but also immortalizing it through your book and making sure generations read and continue with that wisdom. Hasmukh Bhai, I chose to work at Seoul to see Prime Minister's leadership in action through you. And thank you so much for sharing that with our audience here. And Jakshi, bringing in a corporate perspective from an outsider and sharing what you see as a person, as a common citizen about the leader. So very grateful for all of your insights. I also take this opportunity to particularly thank Mr. Unmesh Dikshit of AMA, without whom this gathering would not have happened. Next, I would like to thank my dear team members, Vantika, Rajat, who know when to step back, and Arnab, who knows when to take lead when it matters, and Mustafa Rashid from Piramal Foundation,